Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Serena Stoudemire Wesley. Some of you know me. Judge Johnson, you haven't gotten to meet me in person, but I've heard so much about you, and I'm so happy to get to meet you virtually.
Oh, thank you.
It's really an honor.
Thank you.
I want to welcome you to this change. I want to welcome everybody to the change event. I know some folks are still signing on, but we're going to go ahead and get started because, like I said, we only have an hour and we want to make really good use of our hour and the amazing judges that we have at our event today. So thank you for joining us today. I am joined along with the rest of you by four amazing judges who have led efforts of change within our state. Governor Brown will be joining us shortly, but in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the judges. I'm going to start with Judge Johnson of Umatilla Tribal Court, and you all can give us about 2 or 3 minutes about yourselves, and then Governor Brown should be joining us then. So we'll start with Judge Johnson, then we'll go to Judge Lucero, Judge Oden-Orr, and Judge Sinlapasai.
Yeah, I don't know who this is all going to, but the Lloyd's in imumak alatewa. In Winik was it's ayaya kash wakit kit wat was. And I just said in my own language that hello, I'm glad to see you, family and friends. That my name is Greg Coyote, and I am the judge here at Umatilla. I've been a practicing tribal member all my life, was born and raised on the Umatilla Reservation, moved around to different locations, including what we call wildlife or wilderness, Washington, D.C. I graduated from Pendleton High School, Oregon State University, and University of Oregon Law School, and I'm a member of the Oregon State Bar. Again, I was raised on the reservation, and I'm now raising or helping raise who I consider 12 grandchildren who brought nothing but joy into my life. And I want to end with saying us Indians are still here. We're not gone. We're not vanishing. We didn't vanish. We're still here, and we still speak our language and practice our cultures. And I'm glad to meet all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Judge Lucero, sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me on this panel today. It's a privilege to be here with all of you and to be among these esteemed judges. So my name is Angella Lucero. I'm born and raised in Las Cruces, New Mexico. So I am Hispanic. Before I joined the bench in 2019, I was a practicing attorney here in the Portland metro area. Practicing in insurance defense litigation, as well as personal injury plaintiffs work, not as much on that side as defense. And then I joined the bench in September of 2019. So a large part of my judicial experience has been during the era of COVID. I am a judge in the Multnomah County Circuit Court. We are a bench of general jurisdiction. We handle both civil and criminal caseload, as you will hear from my fellow colleagues. In addition to my judicial work, I serve as a member of the Board of Bar Examiners, and I am a current co-chair for the Oregon Hispanic Bar Association, and am a past president of Oregon Women Lawyers, and am, just generally very active in our specialty bars here in Oregon. Again, thank you for having me.
Mighty everyone. Nice to meet you all virtually. Sad that we can't all be together. I am Judge Jen Pong is the Lao way of saying my name, Sinlapasai, but you can all call me Pong. And I am one of the newest members of the Multnomah County judges, been around for a little bit over 3 months. Before I joined the bench, I was practicing in federal litigation in the world of immigration rights and human rights, mainly with survivors of human trafficking and children who were abused, abandoned, neglected, and the world of sexual violence and domestic violence. So my years of experience working in that world was also working in community at large. I served as the past board president of IRCO, Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, as well as multiple nonprofits like Catholic Charities, as well as others that worked with the immigration as well as victims' rights world. As I joined the judiciary, I am learning and I am listening. My biggest goal is to work with my colleagues, which is an amazing group of people, to help be present and to serve in the best way possible for our community. Thank you for having me.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Judge Melvin Oden-Orr. I'm one of the 38 judges, along with my two other colleagues that are here. One of the 38 judges in Multnomah County. I've been a judge since I was sworn in on Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday in 2018. So I just celebrated my 4th year on the bench. Before becoming a judge, I did a number of things, civil litigation, a lot of business transactions. I used to be in-house counsel and outside counsel for a number of government agencies, the Portland Development, what is now called Prosper Portland, TriMet, the regional transit agency here in Multnomah County, and obviously the other Tri-County area. And for I was a chief hearings officer with the city of Portland for just a bit of time. And for about 12 years, I operated my own private practice where I did a lot of work with minority and women small businesses, including some work on issues related to increasing opportunities for public contracting, which is an issue that I worked on when I was in-house counsel with TriMet. And since being on the bench, I've had the honor and privilege of working on a number of issues related to increasing the confidence in our judicial system on the state level, locally here in Multnomah County, as well as in conjunction with the National Center for State Courts. And so I'm just enjoying being a judge.
Thank you all. Technical issue, which is a good one because we have lots and lots of people wanting to get into the event, and I can't get the governor in right now because it says we're at capacity, even though we had asked for 1,000. But so we're working on it. So if you can, I'm going to go back to Judge Johnson, and could you tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing on the tribal government? With being a tribal judge, what does that look like? As I'm trying to keep things moving as we try to get the governor on board. And you're on mute.
Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Just a little history of me, I guess, and of our court. I've been a judge since 1980. I was tribal attorney before that and tribal chairman of our tribe. And I worked in Washington, D.C. with the American Indian Policy Review Commission in the 1970s. Our court was actually not in existence when I first went to law school, and it was built after I graduated from law school and passed the bar. Basically, we built our own court system in about mid-70s or early 70s to mid-70s. And we always built our court with the premise that we needed to be fair to everybody, that there should be no, I guess, inequity or lack of due process for Indians or non-Indians. And we actually changed our constitution and bylaws, which is the governing document for our tribe, to include persons, not just Indians. So we did that originally, but then there's been different policy and Supreme Court decisions, Oliphant versus Suquamish tribe, that said we couldn't adjudicate Indians or non-Indians because we couldn't give them a fair deal, which I think is wrong. And then other policies that have affected, I guess, the operation of our court. But basically, we've established our court in the last 50 years, actually, in the modern era. And we built it with the premise of being fair and equitable and not making it a court where Bill Johnson or just someone is biased against you or against anyone. We also did it with the premise that we wanted to do it ourselves and that we could do it. and that we needed funding to do that, and that we could provide better protection to our people, our tribal members, and the community than what we were getting under county or state jurisdiction, basically because of lack of funding. They weren't patrolling this area, and we were being underserved. So we decided to establish our own court. We did that. We've been operating since, I've been a judge since 1980, and it was operating before that. We had a chief judge that was a tribal leader, community leader, had a lot of common sense, did not have a law degree. We established our court system with his assistance and lawyers' help, and I guess I helped also. So we've been operating for a long time. We think we're doing a fairly good job, and our people have been appointing me as judge for, I'm in my 4th term of 10-year terms. So I've been here a while. And day to day, we do criminal, civil, any type of law that you can think of is the type of law that we do. Recently, we became, one thing I think I forgot to say was, we are one of the few tribes in the United States. There's about 566 tribes and tribal courts, but we're one of the few tribes in the United States that has established a separation of powers amendment to our Constitution, which means we are not under the authority of anyone except the judges and the laws, and administered according to that and our own rights, that policies that we have concerning civil rights and legal procedure in this court system. So we're one of the few. We passed in 2011, we passed a separation of powers amendment to our Constitution, establishing the court as a separate branch of government. So we're all pretty proud of that, and the community voted for that. It wasn't based on Bill Johnson saying that's what was going to happen. So I'm proud of that the community did that. They've been very supportive of us. They don't always like the decisions we make, but they abide them and have confidence, I think, in our court system. But I think that comes with practicing fairness and equity, and not just to Indians, but to everyone. And I think you need to show that on a daily basis. I'll end with saying that we end up having to live with our decisions because the people that we adjudicate are tribal members and members of the community, not all tribal members, but people in the community that we see daily. So we have a, I guess, a family type environment as a community. We do not, we aren't, as judges, we're not isolated from our decisions. I guess I'll say that. So I'll end with that. Kalo, thank you.
Thank you. Bear with me real quick. I got to make an announcement. To the attendings who are attending, if you are willing to get off the line, just for some of you, so that we can get the governor in, this has been our most popular event. So judges, thank you. We talk about change, Martin Luther King. So everyone's trying to get on. So if a couple of you can get off so that we can get the governor in, we can go ahead and have her on. So, and thank you, I appreciate it. This event is being recorded, so you all can catch it later and you won't have to miss anything. So I appreciate it and I thank you. But not all of you go away, but just enough so we can get the governor in. Okay, thank you. And I'm gonna text them and tell them to go ahead and Judge Sinlapasai, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the work you've done?
Yes, definitely. So before, as I mentioned earlier, I'm one of the newer judges to the judiciary, and it's really a very unusual time to be joining the judiciary under a time of COVID, where we are working through policies and constant changes in what we are trying to do to make sure that we're servicing every individual that's coming to the court that needs help. For me, it is about learning from all of my colleagues and observing. As a newer judge, I am going through what we call the high docket, the high volume docket, and learning from both our referees and our judges who are working the criminal court. I'm like both the other two judges are what we call the general court, which I see civil and criminal cases. I try, and I didn't say a little bit about my background, but growing up, I was a refugee. I came to America as a refugee. I was in the camps in Thailand before I was brought to the US. So my diversity of practice and lens has really taught me a lot about being centered in community. And when I am in court, it's taking that time. We have a high volume docket, and the DAs as well as our defense bars are working triple time. And there are many high emotions most of our days. And it's very important for me in making a difference and change is not ever forgetting my roots and my authentic self. Every time I put on the robe, centering that person that's before me and what they're going on in their life that may need time and attention. I am learning, and every day is learning about what is coming, what's happening, or policies that are changing as a person who is there to interpret the law and to make sure that we are hearing all the facts. My goal is to do that in a way that's kind, that's patient, to really listen, because the communities that are coming in, they're in a lot of pain, and COVID right now has exacerbated that. And for me, I slow down. I also tell the parties to slow down. We may have till the end of the day, but in justice, I do not want to ever rush anybody, and to make sure that everyone is feeling heard. So that's my goal in hoping to make change in what I can do.
Thank you. I think, is the governor on yet?
Not yet.
Okay, well then we're going to go to Judge Orr until she gets here.
Let's see, what would you like? What can I talk about?
Maybe the implicit bias CLE or the implicit bias instruction.
Well, I guess one of the things that I can talk about is the importance of the diversity that we have on our bench. When I came to the bench, one of the things that I think all of my colleagues here will agree, that we come to the bench basically knowing nothing about being a judge, an actual real judge. And so we spent a lot of time talking with our colleagues about how to, oh, there's the governor. Serena. Hey. Governor Brown.
You know what, like I was told the judges, you all are so popular, and this is and I want to apologize to our attendees, but also thank you all for giving up your spots and willing to listen to the recording later. We're excited for this panel. This is great. And Governor, thank you so much for taking up all your time to be here. And as you can see, we have an esteemed panel of judges for our fireside, and we are really excited. And I just want to say this. These cultural events are first for DAS to be doing this way. This is our third one, and we're really excited. This kicks off our year, and there's more to come. But I'm going to shut up and let you all get started. So, Governor, thank you, and I'll go ahead and get going. Governor, judges, it's wonderful to be with you today. Martin Luther King was an incredible man who made profound impacts to our nation. His impacts carry on today, and it's a privilege to be a part of this event in his honor. This is going to be a fireside chat, so I want you all to feel comfortable, which I know you already do. And my first question is, oh no, I'm doing the governors. Let me skip over to my own, what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, she asked me so much. Martin Luther King said he looked forward to a day when people will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And Governor Brown, you have done just that, not only for the judicial branch, but also for our state. And we appreciate you and we thank you. So now we invite you to speak to why racial equity is so important to you and why now.
Thanks, Serena, and good to see everybody. And I'm so pleased we've had such great attendance for this event today. Serena, I just want to say a thank you to you for your extraordinary leadership. You are truly our director of culture change for the state, and I am so grateful for your efforts to literally change the face of state government. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Why is racial equity important to me and why now? I think for me, my goal in being in public service was to create a just and equitable Oregon. And we've worked for the last 30 years to make that happen in my role as a legislator, in my role as Secretary of State, and my role as governor. The reason why it's so important now is because, frankly, with the murder of George Floyd, there is an opportunity to reimagine, re-envision, create a whole new level of equity and justice and work to eradicate racism and colonialism in this state. And so I think this is an incredibly exciting time. I think there is a lot of work to do. Racism won't be deconstructed overnight. It will be built, it will be deconstructed the same way it was built, brick by brick. But I'm absolutely committed with every fiber of my being to make it happen. And I'm really excited about the work that I see happening in state government. I will just say the work I'm really proud of is the work to create the Racial Justice Council. And through the Racial Justice Council, we are centering the voices of Black and Brown and Indigenous Oregonians in both the development of the governor's budget and with the development of the governor's legislative agenda. And I think that's really exciting. And at the same time, I'm really excited to see the work that's happening in other branches of state government. Since we have a number of judges here, obviously what's happening in the judicial branch, and I've worked really hard to appoint a diverse group of judges that really reflect and frankly look more like the faces of Oregon. We're obviously working hard to do that in state government, both in leadership roles and in our workforce. And I know I see that happening on the political side in the legislature as well, and that's a good thing. But just changing, bringing in new leadership is not enough. It's also incredibly important that we work on policies to eradicate racism. And in partnership with the Racial Justice Council, I'm really excited about the work we are doing to move forward on housing policy, on education, frankly, on criminal justice reform, in all of these areas that I truly believe will make an incredible difference in people's lives around the state. And then there's the other piece is obviously how we spend our dollars. And with the collective effort of the Racial Justice Council, we're working to center and include voices of communities that have been historically left behind. And I believe by including these voices and centering these voices, that we can develop a budget both for February and for the future of Oregon that will create a just and equitable Oregon that will create a safer and stronger Oregon. So Serena, I'm really excited about this work. Obviously, this is work that we all need to do together, but I'm confident after coming through this pandemic that we have a commitment from Oregonians in every nook and cranny of the state to make this happen and to build a state that enables everyone, regardless of who they are, regardless of their zip code, regardless of their income, that enables each and every one of us to achieve our full potential. And that's a good thing.
Thank you, Governor. And you want to go ahead and start with your first question to the panel?
Absolutely. My first question, and we'll just go ahead and dive in here. The legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King encompasses influential decisions, monumental actions, and steadfast progression of humanitarian rights that reach far beyond the civil rights movement. With that said, how does Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy resonate, and what are the most effective ways to create change while you are on the bench and while you are part of the judicial branch as a whole?
So this is Judge Oden-Orr. I'll go first. Judge Governor Brown, always a pleasure to see you. It's been too long since I've seen you in person. You know, so for me, the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King is something that I take on as a personal responsibility, and so much so that when you honored me with an appointment in 2017 in December, I scheduled my swearing in for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and because I wanted to show that connection. So, but then beyond that, so in my role as a judge, I think we have a couple of ways that we are able to affect change. I think, you know, first and foremost, everyone knows that the judges sit in the courtroom and we deal with people, and so we're able to affect change. And I think the biggest piece of that is doing things that increase the confidence that our system is fair, right? I think too many people these days come into court, doubt, especially people of color, come into court doubting that that's a place where they're going to be heard, they're going to be listened to, and they're going to be able to share their story. And so, so the first and foremost is making sure that we're making court a place where people feel heard and respected, and that's going to increase their personal confidence in our system. But beyond that, the one thing that I didn't know before I became a judge that I've learned, and it's become probably the best part of my job, is that judges actually work with our system partners to make our system work for people or not work for people. And so it's been my pleasure and honor to work with my colleagues here in Multnomah County, and then with the Supreme Court and the court throughout the state on issues that make our system work better for people, as well as some of the work that I've been doing on the national level. And so it's, you know, I think my voice is a unique voice, and I think the more unique voices we have at those tables where we're talking about what we should be doing, I think that that's going to move us closer to a situation where people have more confidence in our system.
Piggybacking on Judge Oden-Orr's comments, good afternoon, Governor Brown. Thank you for allowing us to all be here with you today. It's a privilege to share this space. Like Judge Oden-Orr, kind of I'll piggyback on what he said. I think Martin Luther King Jr. resonates with so many people and all of the efforts and actions that he did to affect change. And one of his famous quotes that I kind of always think about is, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And so as a judge, we carry such immense power and privilege. And I think for us judges, it's important to be aware and mindful of that power and privilege and that space that we get to operate and occupy in this world. And so every time I take the bench, I realize that each day as a judge, the decisions I make affect people's everyday lives, their livelihood, their fundamental rights. And so it's really important that as judges, we're aware of that, and that we're aware of the biases and the prejudices that we as human beings all bring. And in doing that, I think that we will then kind of check those biases when appropriate. I think that having a diverse bench helps to make sure that those biases remains in check. I know that we operate in silos, but at the same time, our bench can be very collaborative. And when you know that you have that privilege, like Judge Oden-Orr said, we have the opportunity to sit on various committees, both locally, nationally, and throughout the state. And because of that privilege that we're able, that we have as judges, we have the, we have the ability to make impact on policies and procedures that take place in our courtroom. And in order for us to have a just system, we have to have the confidence of the people who appear before us. And I think that the only way that you can do that is to make sure that we are aware of equity and that everyone who appears before us is heard, as Judge Oden-Orr has previously said.
This is Chanpone. Hi, Governor Brown.
Hi.
Nice to see you. I'm one of the newer appointees by Governor Brown, September 20th, 2021 is my swearing in. I'm going to piggyback off both what Judge Oden-Orr and Judge Lucero said. For me, what resonates so much in terms of what Martin Luther King has taught me as a refugee who came to the United States during the civil rights movement was also a movement to protect refugees and to fight for refugees to come into the United States. And so the quote that always sticks to me is, "We are not makers of history, we are made by history." Those words echo with my practice as a lawyer, as an advocate for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault, but also when I sit at the judiciary, that my place is not just to make history, but to acknowledge the past, to be present with every case, and to be part of what both Judge Lucero and Oden-Orr said, a system of change to partake and bring the lens of our community forward. Many of the immigrants and refugees, as well as survivors of human trafficking that I worked with through my 20 years, did not see the judiciary as a place to uphold their rights, which we are sworn to do, but yet access was always a barrier. That my goal and with my colleagues is to bring that information, that knowledge, truly to community, and to someday, maybe post-COVID, to make the courthouse more accessible by holding the classes with the kids again, by doing, classroom in the law project more. All these little things that instills trust and hope that we don't work in silo and we're not an extension of each other, but that we're all interconnected to make sure that we uphold everybody's day in court. So thank you.
Thank you. Judge Johnson, do you want to tackle that one as well?
Yes, I do. And glad to see you, Governor. I don't know if I've ever met you in person. I've seen you around and glad to be here. Glad you invited me and my tribe to represent. I would say this, that in the past, a lot of our leaders in the 1800s and through the 1900s and to the present have always said things that the law should be fair, applicable to non-Indians and Indians in the same way. And that we should all be able to go about our business, be educated, be able to work, have our families, have our culture, have our language, have our religion, all as anyone else would. That once that type of law was applied to everyone, and this is back in the 1800s, I think Chief Joseph said that once all the laws that the non-Indians are treated the same way that the Indians are treated in the court, then he would know that the laws were fair. And I think Dr. Martin Luther King espoused or echoed that through all his practices and actions. I always admired him, and I remember when he was assassinated in 1968. It was a horrible day. It was something that you just saw that and you knew that it was some kind of a vile hatred that came about, not because of him, but that was used against him. And he still survives to this day, even though he's gone. So I think we've appreciated that type of equity or fair treatment for all, not just Indians. And we've tried to espouse that in our system. When we first started our system, and it's kind of strange, I do want to put in a plug that please appoint an Indian to one of the circuit courts or to the Supreme Court or to something. And I don't mean me, there's plenty of Indians in Oregon that are practicing here and that are Indians, tribal members, that would be fine members of your judiciary. I know they're fine members of ours now, of the tribal judiciary. But we have in our court system, Umatilla system, which has been in existence since about 1972, 73, something like that. We always espouse that we wanted to treat everyone fairly and that we did not want unfairness to Indians or non-Indians, that we wanted to treat everybody the same. And I think we've demonstrated that through the years of our history of our court system. It's been run by Indians. It's established under our tribal laws and motor vehicle codes and all that. And they're similar to everyone else's. They're not exactly the same. And we have different practices and cultural impacts, including ICWA or child rearing, including hunting and fishing that's different, including our ceremonies of marriage, ceremonies, funerary ceremonies for funerals, different customs that we have. So the one thing I think is important for us is to demonstrate, and I think we do that we collaborate with outside cultures, communities, appreciate them. We don't necessarily, I always say this to people, we don't necessarily want you to be Indian. We just want you to appreciate that we are and how we operate and why we do. And that we do these things, our culture, our language, our family, because that's the way we want to live. And we were, I think there was a lot of policies through history that tried to take that away from us or make us not speak our language, like boarding schools in Forest Grove or whatever. So I would say that we're demonstrating that we're still here. There's actually 9 federally recognized tribes in Oregon, all of whom have competent, if they have a court system, they have competent legal staff or legal judges, staff, administrators who are tribal members mostly, and that are doing a good job. So I think I would say that we try to demonstrate that, and I always end on something that I think it was Senator Inouye, who's now deceased, from Hawaii. I was at a conference that he was speaking at, and he said that you will be judged by how you judge your people. You will be judged by how you treat your people. Your laws will be judged by how they treat your people. And I think there's laws now on the books, not just pertaining to Indians, but that are not fair and that need to be changed. And I think we're going about doing it. I think the national sentiment across the United States is changing from one of Black Lives Matter to critical race theory and I don't know what else. And it becomes, I think, real contrarian to, I think, fairness and equity. When you start saying we shouldn't have critical race theory or we shouldn't do something, I call that telling the truth. You shouldn't tell the truth, so let's not make somebody embarrassed. I think sometimes, and I guess I feel this way, this is my own person, this is not my tribal policy, my tribe's policy. But I think ever so often some culture who acts badly needs to have a spiritual spanking and to be told, you know, that isn't right. So let's don't do that again and say you're sorry and let's move on. Let's don't dwell on the situation. And I don't mean just small things. I mean really bad things. So I'm glad to be here, and I guess that'll conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Johnson. And yes, I appreciate your comments. We are working hard to diversify our trial court, appellate court, and Supreme Court bench. I do not believe I have appointed a Native American, a tribal member to Oregon's courts yet, but let's try and make that happen in the next 11 months and 1 week. How's that?
I appreciate that, and I would say you're not the only governor who hadn't done it. Okay. So thank you.
I think that's right. So I appreciate all of your comments, and I at least went to law school because I wanted the tools to achieve justice and equity in this world. And I see the judicial branch as a key component of creating that world. And I guess I would come back to you, and I think Judge Oden-Orr picked up on this. One of your key roles is to promote confidence in the judicial system, to build trust. So my question to you, and again, whoever wants to take it, how do you promote confidence, create a trust, and embed equity in the court system on a system of laws? I think we can all agree that we're founded on institutionalism and colonialism. How do you take the frame that you have and embed equity in that in your court?
Well, this is Judge Oden-Orr. I went first last time. It makes sense that I go first this time, I think. I think one of the things that I always remember is that when I'm dealing with one person in the courtroom, other people are watching me deal with that person. And so if I'm not dealing with that person in what others might perceive as a fair way, then their expectation that they will be treated fairly is going to go down, right? They're going to assume, okay, that guy, he's got, I don't know what his deal is today, but he's not treating people fair or right. And so it's always important to remember, each person you deal with, it's not just that person that you're dealing with, but you're representing the court to all the people who are watching, right? And all the eyes are on you. But a couple of things that I do that I think promote confidence in the system is soon after I came to the bench, one of the issues that I sort of started reading a little bit about was the impact of implicit bias in our system. And so I started to raise the issue in my court, and I had conversations with my colleagues about how do we best raise the issue of implicit bias so that jurors know that we all have them, and that those biases should not be used as the basis for their jury verdicts. And so we now statewide have an implicit bias jury instruction that's a uniform, that's a standard. And the issue is just getting, it's being taken on a national level as well. And so addressing the issue of implicit bias is one way that I deal with that. Another issue, and I think this also impacts what people think about our system and the kind of confidence that we have, is diversifying the jurors, making sure, doing things to increase the diversity of our jury panels. And so that's something that I'm involved in on a statewide level, a national level, and hopefully some of that work will impact the way we seat our jurors in Oregon.
For me, I'll take a stab at that question. For me, as a newer judge, again, I think that the majority of my time on the bench, with the exception of 6 months, has been under the age of COVID and dealing with this pandemic. So, operations in the court system have changed dramatically because of this pandemic. And I think that the court has, we work in one of the largest counties in the state, and the court has worked really hard statewide to try and deal with the inequities that COVID in and of itself has provided. And so, just acknowledging that we're still dealing with this pandemic, and there's things that we're trying to work through on that. With regards to my ability to kind of provide a sense of justice and fairness in my courtroom, I have come to this position with a sense that I want to provide a courtroom in an environment where people feel that they're heard, that they feel that the court has given them a fair shake. I am one that I always make sure that whether it's attorneys, it's the litigants, it's jurors, everybody kind of understands the system, understands kind of what is going to happen in my courtroom in any given day. If there are language barriers, to ensure that those language barriers are addressed, and that they, and if they can't be addressed that day, that things get set over. I'm very mindful of the fact that I don't know all the cultural impacts that one comes to our courtroom with. And so it's really important that those are heard. And I think a big part of our job is to listen and to learn. So I try and really listen to, attorneys, to parties, to jurors who appear in our courtroom, and to my fellow judges, because I don't get to see everything that happens in the courtroom. And we learn as much from other judges. We learn what worked, what didn't work, how to fix it, to be willing to make those changes. And so a lot of what I've come is to embrace this ever-changing system that we're working in, and trying to be a good listener and be willing to learn from others.
I guess we'll go in order. Since I am the newest judge, my docket has really been with the high volume docket. The majority of the cases that I've been seeing are folks who are pro se, who don't have attorneys. And it's very important to me, because when I look out in the audience and those who are in my courtroom, whether they're via WebEx or by telephone or in person, it's really slowing down to hear them. Many people coming to the courtroom, especially those who aren't pro se, do not understand what's going on. Taking the time to ensure that they understand. Sometimes I'm like a broken record and I say, do you understand? Do you need a moment? And although we can't give legal advice, it's very important to me to make sure that we have all, for my clerks as my judicial assistant, to provide the phone numbers to resources that are out there. We are dealing with a lot of crisis in terms of mental health and our houselessness. And so I want to make sure that everyone who comes through gets that opportunity to feel that we care, that the judiciary may not have all the answers, but they'll will point you to the right directions to get the help that you need during such a volatile time. So that's what I hope to do and continue to do.
I knew that 80% of the family law cases were unrepresented. I didn't realize that the general population, same issue.
Yes, when I did the small claims court, the majority of the people were unrepresented. And then when I did for about 3 weeks, I was with Judge Peterson doing landlord-tenant. And those were some of the most heartbreaking cases, because it was a collection of the community, from our veterans to our elderly, to our mental health, to those who were on the verge of mental health breakdowns. And so many of them didn't have attorneys. And so having to slow down, I created a script shared by other judges to help explain the steps, but also I had resources at the table. So when they came up, they could pick up and go. And I also took the time to say, we also have, which is beautiful at the Multnomah County Courthouse, the second floor, we have language lines where you go on the computer. And most people didn't know that they could pick up the phone and the phone was free. So just taking those steps.
Incredibly important to make sure that people's rights and human dignity are protected. So thank you. Judge Johnson.
Yeah, I think I'll take a little lead from Judge Oden-Orr and talk about jury selection or jury diversity. Ours is kind of works in reverse. We have tribal laws, tribal judges, tribal court, and the community that we extract or take our jurors from used to be only tribal members, used to be only people who lived on the reservation and were tribal members. And after many complaints from my mother, who's now deceased, who said, I'm tired of being on your jury all the time, find somebody else to be on it. And I took that to heart, and our law, I reread our law, that was in the, I think, early 80s, 80, 81. I read our laws that said we could select anyone for our juries who were persons living on the Umatilla Indian Reservation within the geographical bounds of that. So without asking anybody, I just started selecting people from the voters list, Oregon driver's license list, our housing list, which included our housing development list or housing authority list, which had non-members living there with tribal members. And we select and employees and started selecting people who lived on the reservation who weren't Indians. So that was something I thought, I didn't think it was a big deal, except got my mother off my back. But throughout the United States, all tribes don't do that. For one thing, they don't all have non-tribal members live or non-Indians living on the reservation. We do. I think Warm Springs does. I think most reservations in Oregon do. I don't know about Burns Paiute, but anyway. So we did that. I want to share with you a story that when we were selecting a jury from this pool, including non-Indians, we were asking, in voir dire, the questions of, can you be fair? Have you not heard about this case? Are you not biased? And a non-Indian person raised their hand who was in our jury pool and said, I don't want to be prejudiced or anything, but do you know I'm not an Indian? And we said, yeah, that's legal. And even though you're not Indian, we'll still believe that you can give us truth and veracity in this trial. So everybody kind of laughed, but that's what we think about diversity. It kind of works in reverse and on reservations sometimes, is that we, I guess, want to show that we can treat people fairly, not just Indians. We treat everyone fairly. And that we have in our jury pool non-Indians as well as tribal members, as well as tribal members of other tribes. So just not from our pool of community here. And thanks to they can thank my mother for that, I guess. And I guess I'll end on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Johnson, and thank you all for really incredible and very thoughtful conversation. Each day, I know that each one of you upholds justice and ensures that all of the litigants in front of you receive fair treatment as their right. And I just want to say I'm incredibly grateful for the profound work that you do in our state. Thank you so much for your service. Serena, thank you so much for having me here today. It's certainly a privilege and an honor to be with all of you in this space today, honor Dr. King. So please stay safe and be well.
And I will just say thank you, Governor, and thank you, judges. This was amazing. Sorry for the technical difficulties up front. We will get that handled. And I just want you to know, we have the amazing opportunity to work with a very diverse employees internally and externally every day in our state. And it makes me so proud of the growth that we're experiencing. So when I say you panel of judges, it makes me even prouder to call myself an Oregonian. And I was born and raised here. And I love you all and I thank you. And Judge Johnson, I can't wait to meet you in person again, because I've heard so much about you. And thank you all. And I know this was a lot, taking an hour out of your day, but it's greatly appreciated by our staff, our employees. And again, this is recorded, so I'll make sure everyone gets a copy within our employees, so our employees can have access. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your help. Kolo.
Thank you.